The first time I heard Shostakovich's music when I was in my first year of music college. Our history of music teacher showed us the recording of Dmitri Shostakovich's opera Katerina Izmailova. I listened to it at first indifferently and then getting more and more carried away, listening to these strange sounds and gradually falling in love with this very special musical language. While listening, I couldn't wait my teacher's comments. I thought she will tell us an inspiring story of the creation of the work as she did before when she talked about composers. But instead she told us that Shostakovich was a tragically unhappy person who was forced to make compromises in order to survive. This opera was forbidden for a time, and after the premiere Shostakovich was declared an enemy of the people. Those days I didn't know yet what enemy of the people meant, but I was deeply struck by the fact that a person, and even a brilliant one, can find himself in a situation where he is forbidden to speak his own language, that he needs to create works pleasing and interesting to someone superior, but contradicting his own beliefs. And this is considering just Shostakovich in a sense was lucky, because he was not repressed openly, but paid a high price for it. His whole life was in the palm of his hand of the Soviet authorities and personally for Stalin. But did you know how many people has been subjected to various kinds of repressions during the Soviet political terror? Since 1917 till 1991, according to the projects Open Leaf and Immortal Barak, more than 3,281,099 people was repressed, shot, held in concentration camps and prisons, subjected to punitive psychiatry, deported, exiled, deprived of voting rights and dispossessed. And more than 1,000 of them were musicians, composers and performers. Since I realized these statistics, I began to study the surviving documents about the repressed musicians in more detail. And most of all, I was touched by the stories of composers, many of whom in those years were very young, students and graduates of conservatoires. I listened to their music, the one that had been preserved, and was surprised to realize how beautiful, fresh and amazing it was. There were the people who was creating a new post-revolutionary history, which they were not allowed to create. And many of them were waiting for prisons instead of final exams, workers' barracks instead of concert halls, cold and death instead of universal recognition. And then I realized that I couldn't leave it like that I had to do something about it. As a music researcher, performer and as a curator, I realized that we need to talk about the tradition that we are all hearers of today, about the forgotten or intentionally destroyed musical tradition that goes hand in hand with the history of repression. I realized that many experimental Russian things that we see on the modern stage have completely different roots than it commonly believed. And then I decided that it was necessary to revive this tradition and the music that was not heard once, but let it sound now. And that's the point where the project Unhappened History starts. At first, I decided to make the topic more specific. So this is a project focused on Soviet music of 1920s, 1980s. The main theme is dedicated to musicians, composers and sound experimentalists whose works was forbidden or who was repressed, who wasn't able to make art or speak to their own artistic languages. Second part of project planning was definition of 4 main lines of the project. I conditionally divided it into several directions, like music of academic scene, sound experiments, cinema music and interdisciplinary art. The first 3 directions have already been launched and are being implemented, and the 4th has been identified as the planned growth point of the project. One of the lines of this project is music of Dmitri Shostakovich, whose figure became already a symbol of strongest character, the fate of the artist broken by political circumstances and falling in love with music no matter what. String quartet or brilliant soloists play all the cycle of chamber quartets by Shostakovich. The cycle of quartets was created since 1938 till 1974, and it keeps musical memory of the whole epoch. The next line is lectures on different directions of academic music, as composers, pieces, theatre music and operas, musical ensembles, persons of repressed musicians, etc. Famous Russian musicologists and researchers give lectures on offline and online formats. Next, concerts with repressed composers' music, whom, unlike Shostakovich, was particular to not know at all, like Alexander Veprik, Alexander Kenel, Mikhail Nosarev, Vsevolod Zadiratsky, Alexander Mosolov and many others. Next, large open talks in mixed online-offline format, when everyone can write to the organizers and ask any question about the repressed musician. And especially for the audience, the curators will conduct a detailed research on any specific topic and then provide detailed information at open meetings. The first 3 directions have already been implemented and continue to develop, and the first is the planning stage, as it requires more complex technical aspects. The next project line is sound experimentalism, and lectures on different directions of Soviet experimentalism in the field of sound opens it. There are lectures on the work of Arseny Avramov, Zigovetov, and many persons like them. Next, open meetings with the audience, where different types of experimentalism are discussed in dialogue mode, as well as some documents, audio files, or video clips are demonstrated. And final line of the direction of reconstruction and construction of sound inventions based on preserved patents, which is planned as a point of growth of the project, given its necessary volume and perspective. The next large line of the project is film music, since many composers whose creativity was limited in the academic sphere came to the cinema and created real sound masterpieces there. Here we hold polemical film screenings as well as open discussions with the audience. All events of the project and happened history are implemented in the format of an open study. All information is structured and all events are recorded in a video format. The final of the project will be the creation of a large database on repressed music of Soviet period in the form of online platform. In our difficult times, it's really difficult to predict when the project may be finally completed, but the creation of the first prototype of online platform is planned by the beginning of 2023. The project development line is built in such a way as to show that we today, both artists and listeners, those who perceive arts, are heirs of a completely unique creativity tradition. The goal of the project is not only to legally discover the forgotten, but also to show that the unlived tradition continues to influence us today, and that we need to be able to properly listen it in order to find something very special. This whole project for me is just the beginning of a big theme. For me, this is a story not about any particular time or topic, but about giving a voice to those who have not been heard. To give life to music that didn't sound. This has happened in different countries and at different times. So for me, the history of Soviet music during the repression is just the beginning, the end right point, because this is a story of my country and therefore mine personally. Just as history is important to each of us, whether we are artists or musicians, physicists or economists, we always carry in ourselves a certain history and responsibility for it. There are different times in life of each of us, and sometimes it happens that it becomes difficult or even impossible to talk about the present. When we cannot understand why certain events occur or whether we can somehow influence them. At such moments when it's impossible to talk about the present, we can always look into the past and find answers to our questions that concern us maybe right now.